Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. The Defense Research and Development Organization, country's premier defense research institution, has been under some focus for the past 6 months or so, ever since the Prime Minister's office appointed a committee to look into its restructuring and revamping. 4 months after the committee set up by the Prime Minister's office submitted its report, the DRDO has now started taking steps to implement some of the recommendations. At least majority of them is something that is coming to the fore. That is the subject of this week's episode of Simply Nitin. I am Nitin Gokhale. So after the initial reservation expressed by the top management of Defense Research and Development Organization, which most of you would know was established in 1958 and became what it is in 1978 with enhanced budget and more powers for its scientists. And since then, it has been a major success story for the country's defense research because the defense scientists undertook seminal work in certain areas like missiles, torpedoes, naval systems, radars, and made sure that the Indian Armed Forces got what they wanted. But in the past decade or so, or I would say, in fact, the past 25 years nearly, ever since the Kargil war ended in the summer of 1999, it was felt that the DRDO needed to keep up with the needs of the modern times and the needs of the armed forces, which keeps changing with the nature of war and the prosecution of war in the way war is conducted or war is fought. And over the past quarter century, this has now become evident that the DRDO needs a major restructuring. Therefore, when the Prime Minister's office appointed a 9-member K VijayRaghavan led committee comprising some of the leading industrialists or representatives of industry, defense industry, academics, also the former principal scientific advisor to the Prime Minister, K VijayRaghavan. It was felt that the committee would actually recommend, and some armed forces personnel or senior leaders, veterans of the armed forces, they were also part of that committee. They all came up with a very radical set of recommendations for making the DRDO more agile, more effective, more efficient, in keeping with the need of the time. The report has not been officially made public, but dribs and drabs of information, including to this channel and including to this reporter, have been available through various sources. And it is very clear that the whole theme of the change that has been suggested is to take DRDO out of its old-fashioned structure and the old-fashioned way of functioning. Because today the technology absorption is faster in the armed forces, the technology development across the world is much faster, and the requirement of the technology to be developed in a shorter frame of time would involve the private sector in the defense industry. That was also felt by the committee. So they actually suggested radical change. So to implement that set of recommendations by the committee, the DRDO, like I said, after initial reservation, there was a lot of apprehension, a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, I would say, within the DRDO community, amongst the defense scientist community and their seniors who had retired long ago, and some of the people who thought that DRDO is the final word or the only answer to India's quest for self-reliance or Atmanirbharta, were extremely angry because some of the suggestions were out of the box, they were radical, and they seemed not acceptable to the defense scientists right at the beginning. So the DRDO and section of the defense establishment led by the people in the Ministry of Defense, not the armed forces, but the civilian part of the Ministry of Defense, actually tried to join forces together to try and scuttle the implementation of the recommendations of the committee. This matter, of course, then went to the Prime Minister's office again. It, I'm sure, went to the National Security Advisor and to the NSCS, the National Security Council Secretariat, where after a series of deliberations and series of probably animated exchanges and hot discussion or hot debate, finally the PMO has now told the DRDO that it has no choice but to accept most of the recommendations of the committee led by K VijayRaghavan. Now, DRDO scientists and DRDO insiders do accept the need for change, and the overall objective of the committee's report, which was to basically make DRDO lean and mean and can be a vehicle for faster delivery. In fact, that was the thing, that was the only common point perhaps, but how to go about it was a major point of difference. So, the DRDO now has decided that since it has no choice, it might as well do it itself by organizing or reorganizing itself, revamping itself. And for that, an internal oversight committee of the secretary, led by the Secretary and Director General DRDO, Dr. Distinguished Scientist Dr. Samir Kamat, and supported by two senior-most Director Generals, Distinguished Scientist and Director General of Aeronautical Systems, M.A. Siddiqui, and Distinguished Scientist and Director General Electronics and Communication Systems, Dr. B.K. Das, will form the oversight or the overseeing committee of the DRDO, internal overseeing committee. Besides this overarching oversight committee, there are supposed to be 13 different panels which have been formed for making the practical suggestions for reorganizing and revamping the DRDO structure. These various verticals which will be revamped or which are being looked at by clubbing them together are, just for an example, human resource management, procurement in the DRDO, formation of DRDO Technological Council, recruitment of scientists into DRDO, the relationship between DRDO and the defense industry and MSMEs, all that these committees will look at. They have, of course, been given a very hard deadline of 31st August 2024 to complete the reorganization and start rolling out the implementation. Now, whether that will happen or not remains to be seen, because we are already at the end of May. But the fact is, the DRDO has been now shaken out of its complacency, perhaps, may not be too harsh a word to use, because every organization needs shaking up. Like the armed forces are now being restructured and are moving towards eventual joint theatres or joint theatre commands to bring in more efficiency, to make them lean and mean, and to increase their combat effectiveness or combat power edge, which needs to be always maintained over the adversary, or at least matching or able to withstand the adversary's offensive action. And therefore, since armed forces are undergoing a tectonic shift and generational change, the DRDO also needed to undergo the concurrent changes. That's exactly what is being done. If you look at what the initial committee reports had said, what the committee wanted to do was this. The proposal was to have a roadmap, and they had proposed a structure, the reorganizing committee or the reform committee under distinguished scientist and principal scientific advisor to the Prime Minister, the former principal scientific advisor to the Prime Minister, K VijayRaghavan, was to have this structure, and which we had actually put out in January. There's going to be a Defense Technological Council, which will be the Prime Minister, Defense Minister, NSA and service chiefs. Then there will be functional committees, which comprises the Chief of Defense Staff, Principal Scientific Advisor, Vice Chiefs, and which will be followed by two verticals in the DRDO with two secretaries. Now that is where there is still a matter of different perception. Most people are saying that there should be only one leader, one boss in the DRDO, and you cannot have two bosses. The proposal of the committee was to have a Secretary Defense Science and Technology and Innovation, or DSTI, and a different secretary for Department of Defense Research and Development, like the current post that is there, that is DG, Department of Defense R&D. But that may not be feasible. One vertical followed by two people, one boss followed by two verticals just under the top leader is what now being looked at. And of course, if you go back to the episode we did in January or 4 months ago, you will realize that there were proposals to reorganize 41 laboratories of DRDO into 7 national testing centers, and about 34, the rest of the 34 had to be, or at least had proposed to be, clubbed into 10 clusters depending on the synergy between various labs. That was the idea that had been floated, and that may not be feasible, as some of the insiders in the DRDO are saying. But what is heartening is the fact that DRDO itself has now, after the initial reservation and initial opposition to the proposal, started restructuring itself, looking at infusing new energy, new talent, and making accountability one of the key takeaways or key result areas in the way forward. The final point that I want to make is that DRDO is best suited to interact with the MSME component of the defense industry, innovators in the defense industry, and small players in the defense industry. Apart from transferring technology to whoever can absorb it, the DRDO should now look at future technologies and not get into production, I would say, function for defense products. That should be either given to the defense public sector units or should be passed on to upcoming and vibrant private defense industry. Some people have commented, and there will be, I'm sure, there will be lots of reaction to this episode, where people will say the restructuring ordered by the government and supported by many of us is actually an invitation for more imports, and the lobbies are hard at work, they have won. So all that, I think, is just sour grapes. Basically, the fact is DRDO needed to be brought up to date and had to be modernized in keeping with the need of the time, as I have said earlier. And therefore, this is a welcome step by the DRDO itself, and they should be complimented. The DRDO leadership should be complimented for undertaking the mostly painful job of reforming the organization itself from within. That's the topic that I had chosen this week, because that's something that interests all of us in the defense sector, those who watch, people like us, or those who actually also write about it, and those who use products developed by the DRDO and then used by the armed forces. That's all I have. Do keep watching StratNews Global, and of course, you know where to reach us. Send in your comments. Even if they are critical, they are welcome. But that's the start point of a healthy debate, a constructive debate. We also have our social media handles where you can reach us. They are all visible on the screen. So do keep watching StratNews Global. Until the next time, it's goodbye.